Damolo, yagi hello, damolo, yagi hello, bagakun ha, aguni kunju, alagluni, damaksoluni, hey hey, damaksoluni, hey hey, damolo, yagi hello, damolo, yagi hello, bagakun ha, aguni kunju, alagluni, damaksoluni, hey hey, damaksoluni, hey hey. Bakumi ilagaku yarihanan hanin sanguringnal bakun ha tu halakuni damaksoluni hey hey damaksoluni hey namalo yarihalo namalo yarihalo bakun ha Alagni, damaksoluni, hey hey, damaksoluni, hey hey. Tukiyukama, yagihayako, damolo, yagihalo, bakun ha-hun-ha-hun-tu, akuli-hun-tu, alagni, damaksoluni, hey hey, damaksoluni, hey hey, damolo, yagihalo, damolo, yagihalo, bakun ha-hun-ha-hun-tu, akuli-hun-tu, alagni, damaksoluni, hey hey, damaksoluni, hey hey, damolo, yagihalo, damolo, yagihalo, bakun ha-hun-ha-hun-tu, akuli-hun-tu, alagni, damaksoluni, hey hey, damaksoluni, hey hey.
Indigenous people, shine your light, we are equal. I remember the days when our prayers were illegal. I remember the days when being Indian was lethal. Yeah, we had a rough past, but get ready for the sequel. Get ready for the glorious comeback of our people. Oh yeah, rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up, wake up. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. All nations rise, rise up, 'cause now's your time. We don't have to hide anymore, 'cause now's the time. With forgiveness as my bow and my prayers as my arrows, pull them back and let go. I watch them fly like sparrows. Have hope. Yeah, have hope. With compassion as my shield and faith down to my marrow, I will walk the pollen path even when it gets narrow. Yeah, yeah, I resurrect. Yes, you can bet that we seen the single mama raising children on the res. We seen domestic violence tear apart what we have left. We seen the alcohol take it all and leave us dead. We seen the children take their lives when they can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. Can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war. No, we can't take the dread anymore. It's a war, but we've seen it all before. And now we know we can change it, 'cause that's why we were born. We know we are the ones that we have been waiting for. We are the ones Grandma has been praying for. So rise up, all you warriors of love, all you answers to the prayers of our ancestors from above. I can feel it in my heart, can you feel it in your blood? I can hear the seventh fire calling us to wake up. Wake up. Pueblo hermoso, levántense, es nuestro tiempo. No tienes que esconderte más, ahora es nuestro tiempo. Mujer indígena, tú eres tan sagrada. Traigas medicina de tu suelo todavía. A pesar del abuso de tu cuerpo y tu tierra, respetamos tus ancestros y la suya cultura. Hombre indígena, tú eres honorable y yo veo la fuerza que todavía sobrevive. A pesar del abuso de tu raza venerable, yo respeto tus ritos, tus danzas, tus padres. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más. Somos guerreros del amor y guerreros de la paz. Sí, no vamos a escondernos más.
They say that history is written by the victors. But how can there be a victor when the war isn't over? The battle has only just begun, and Creator is sending His very best warriors. And this time, it isn't Indians versus cowboys. No, this time, it is all the beautiful races of humanity together on the same side, and we are fighting to replace our fear with love. And this time, bullets, arrows, and cannonballs won't save us. The only weapons that are useful in this battle are the weapons of truth, faith, and compassion.
Indigenous people.
The liberators start with T, A to Z. The game changers, the ones who lead. The curious, the line erasers, brave-hearted. If I'm ever no finish to what we started. In every culture, everywhere, ever since. The move makers, the won't quit. Your neighbors, your children, it's probably hard to read it. Believe it when you see it. Miss Major. Standing up for incarcerated sisters. Didn't really care if you called them mister. Couldn't miss them. Miss Major. They are mother, father, daughter, son, healer, mender. But above all that, transgender. Culture keeper, love seeker. Lifting up all their people just like the who was leading all of Egypt on the regal. Queen in male clothes, plus a pharaoh. One of the greatest wonders of yesterday, today, tomorrow. The liberators start with T, A to Z. The game changers, the ones who lead. The curious, the line erasers, brave-hearted. If I'm ever no finish to what we started. In every culture, everywhere, ever since. The move makers, the won't quit. Your neighbors, your children, it's probably hard to read it. Believe it when you see it.
Rivera battle discrimination. Sylvia pushing the limit for equal homes, jobs, and all good quality of life. Lit up the city of lights with their fight for human rights. Like
them bars, I stay nation way wild. Culture keeper like buzzing and the test. Two-spirit hero, sliding and riding with Geronimo, unafraid of the impossible. Breaking molds, fierce vision, Apache never fold. First two-spirit to get in and through U.S. Congress. Culture nation, get your knowledge, dropping love into the fire, loud and proud of a fighter. Culture keeper, lift them higher and show them who. The liberators start with T, A to Z. The game changers, the ones who lead. The curious, the line erasers, brave-hearted. Never ever no finish to what we started. In every culture, everywhere, ever since. The move makers, the won't quit. Your neighbors, your children, it's probably hard to read it. Believe it when you see it.
In California, there are in excess of 250 languages, 250 distinct cultures and communities. Becoming familiar with these nations, these peoples, is so very important.
Coast Miwok,
Bay Miwok,
Karkin, Chichenyo,
Tanian,
Ramatush,
Aswa,
Ramsian,
Chalone,
Salini,
Yokut, Esseling.
Those are just a few of what we recognize Central Coastal California, Bay Area.
This album was recorded on a lonely land with our community, you.
You are powerful.
You are brave.
You're brilliant. You believe me.
You ask questions.
You listen. You accept me. You stand up for people who don't look like you. You make new friends.
You show us that we are still changing.
You are legacy.
There's only one you.
You are the love.
You are the love.
Welcome, 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 everyone. My name is Dr. Farima Khorshid, and it is such an honor to share virtual space with you all. I have been a core organizer with Teachers for Social Justice for almost a decade now. I'm also a professor at the University of San Francisco. I'm also a board member with the Abolitionist Teaching Network and the Education for Liberation Network. And T4SJ is home, y'all. So it's an honor to now be with you for our second of a 3-part series of our Humanizing Our Learning Spaces. And what we want to do first is, let me just introduce myself fully. I am a brown-skinned woman with a black shirt and purple lettering that says "Existence is Resistance." I have earrings on with curly hair, and I have some beautiful art from Fabiana Rodriguez and Melanie Cervantes behind me. And we're getting ready to just kind of ground ourselves in this space, y'all. So please make sure you take some deep breaths, hydrate yourselves, have your snacks ready, and take care of yourself in whatever way you should on a Saturday afternoon as you engage in some solidarity work with us. I also just want to make sure that we save the date for our last of the 3-part series, which is happening on December 12th and is titled "Another World is Possible." So for those of you who are new to QR codes, if you open up your smartphone to your camera, and simply place the camera over this barcode in the corner of the screen, it will take you to our virtual program, and you can keep track of how today's session will unfold. I also just want to make sure that we are aware that, you know, T4SJ is doing our work around disability justice, and we in no way are where we should be, but we are trying to learn. And we understand that disability justice and access is not just about logistics, it is integral to love and our liberation, to building a movement that represents folks that we want in leadership, with disability justice being central to this. And so we are still growing in this regard. We're grassroots. We have much more work to do, but we do want to make sure that we give a shout out to our 2 ASL interpreters today, Amber Burly and Valerie McMillan. We appreciate you so much. We will strive to make sure that the interpreters are always spotlighted on your screen during this session. And if you're accessing this on Zoom today, just make sure that during screen sharing, your window is in full screen mode, and then you can enlarge the interpreter's windows by dragging the corner. And if you have access or other tech issues, the Q&A button is reserved for accessibility and tech issues only. So today, please use the Q&A for these purposes only. Access live captioning by clicking on the CC button, and then you can adjust caption size by clicking on the subtitle settings. Now, another thing that's really important to us at T4SJ, usually when we are in person with you all, we have community agreements, right? But since we're in this virtual setting, we have some virtual community space keeping agreements. So we just want you to be aware of your relative power and privilege in the world and in this space. Reflecting on intersectionality is always important. If you don't know what intersectionality is, today is a great day to learn, y'all. Google can be your friend in that regard. We also want you to chat mindfully. And what do we mean by chatting mindfully? We mean that we want you to be aware of your purpose in sharing via the chat. Are you sharing in the chat because you want to affirm speakers, because you want to share resources, build connection with folks, amplifying what resonates? These are great things to do. We just want you to be mindful as you're doing it. But we also want you to monitor your space taking in the chat. So try to refrain from any kind of settler-splaining, white-splaining, mansplaining, cis-splaining, hetero-splaining, etc., right? Being aware. And we want you to use your QA function for access and tech issues only. So use the chat function for everything else. And I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to my comrade, Mari, so that they can lead us in our land acknowledgement.
Hello, hi everyone. My name is Mariposa. I'm Mohawk and Filipino. My Filipino tribe is Southern Tagalog. I'm sitting on unceded Ramaytush territory right now, here on Turtle Island. And I just want to say that the Teachers for Social Justice Corps organizers do this work in either what some people call San Francisco, the city. And as we know, it's stolen, occupied, unceded, which means that it was never ceded in any form of treaty. Ramaytush Ohlone homelands, who are also not federally recognized, and what many call the East Bay, which is Chochenyo Ohlone land. The theft of this land from Ohlone peoples is a part of ongoing genocide that has been taking place for centuries. These words are here to acknowledge and express gratitude for the Ohlone peoples who have been living and working on this land for centuries. We know that our work must go beyond words, to stand with the Ohlone peoples and all other First Nations peoples working to protect their land and their culture. We recognize the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. We also recognize that Ohlone people and many other urban or rural Native communities are alive and thriving today, and our work must include their voices and wisdom in our classrooms and our schools. Our solidarity must extend also beyond beyond an acknowledgement, and definitely include action. So it's important to note that, like I said earlier, the Ohlone, not one Ohlone tribe are not federally recognized and they are not state recognized by the state of California. So we want to uplift that Native nations have enduring systems of government, that they are not ethnic groups, but are sovereign nations with tribal sovereignty. Today, in collaboration for Teacher Social Justice, we ask that you join us in committing to doing these actions. Well, number one, researching more about the people whose land you, your family, and your students live on. You can start by downloading the Native Land app or going to native-land.ca, which identifies some of the indigenous names of the occupied land that you are a guest on. Number two, searching for recent Native reviews of books written by Native authors to inform what we used to teach in our classrooms. You can Google Debbie Reese, and she can give you a lot of recommendations for that too. Reading articles from the Native American Journalists Association. Number four, subscribing and listening to All My Relations, our Media Indígena podcast. Number five, advocating for the removal of any Indian mascots in your area, whether it's at your high school, your local team, or a professional sports team. Number six, purchasing and reading Why Indigenous Literature Matters by Danielle Health Justice. Next one. And then donating to organizations that are focused on Indigenous sovereignty and repatriation, such as Segura Land Trust, Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, Black Earth Farms, Shell Mountain Defense Funds, organizations that focus on land tax and repatriation. Thank you. We also want to uplift the issues of missing, murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit peoples. This is a pandemic before COVID that has happened since starting 500 years ago, with Pocahontas being one of the first MMIW G2S. This legacy of violence against Native women and children's dates, as I said before, over 500 years. Next one. 4 out of 5 Native women are affected by violence today. With Two-Spirit peoples, the data is not very clear because we're still learning more about collecting that data. The U.S. Department of Justice found that American Indian women face murder rates that are more than 10 times the national average. And homicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among 10 to 24 years old of age, and the 5th leading cause of death among Native women between 25 and 34 years of age. Centers for the Disease Control and Prevention of Homicide. I think this is really important to hold this space and think about that, right? When we're thinking about child welfare and we're thinking about education, right? Native people are #1 in deep child poverty and ranked 49th in education. Next slide, please. So welcome everyone to Teacher for Social Justice. And you are here at Unsettling Settler Colonialism. Yay! We have done a lot of work to get you all here. We're very excited about what is going to be happening and the people you're going to be listening to today. Next slide, please.
Thank you so much, Madi. So Madi is the homie, is the comrade, is the T4SJ family, and will be the co-MC for today. And I think it's just really important for us to kind of establish some framing around why we chose to really think about and center unsettling settler colonialism for this part of the series. As we witness the transition of presidential power, we recognize that the struggle for social justice in and outside of our classrooms must continue. We must continue to reckon with the foundational violences of this country, the long afterlives of enslavement and settler colonialism and their ongoing embodiment in our schools and in schooling. We enjoyed being in community and learning with you during the first webinar and the Reflect and Build session of our Humanizing Our Learning Spaces series. And October's Centering Black Lives. But today, what we wanted to do was focus on unsettling settler colonialism as we learn through a powerful conversation between 3 American Indian activists, Auntie Charlene Francis, our very own comrade Mariposa, and Don Neptune Adams. And so today we hope to further deepen our understanding of settler colonialism together through our collective insights and resources shared. And we also recommend that in conjunction with this webinar, that you watch the documentary that we actually have special access to, which is called Dawnland. And we'll show a trailer in just a moment. But this special access that you have will be available for viewing for folks who register up until November 21st. So as an organizational practice, we have also committed to ceding space. And that just means that we are turning over our space to center Black and Native folks to speak to their struggles, their self-determination and solidarity. We recognize that in the past, we have highlighted a lot of scholars who have contributed to our learning in very important ways. And we want to do better by centering the voices of folks on the ground who are doing the everyday work of unsettling settler colonialism. So as listeners, as education stakeholders across various roles and positions, and as participants in this virtual conference, we have to understand how the education system has always been used as a reproduction site of colonial violence. It is our responsibility to learn about the violent historical context and how this violence still manifests in today's context of schooling. So we have to pay particular attention and analyze the micro and macro ways that we engage with this violence in and outside of schools. And this includes examining the ways in which Indigenous and African histories of restorative justice gets erased when RJ is co-opted in schools, as just one example, right? Or how assimilationist values undergird our language and behavioral practices in the classroom. So these are just a few examples. And as an organization, we intentionally decided that we needed to unsettle settler colonialism in this way, as opposed to organizing a panel around the electoral reckoning of this election, right? While that is important, we as an organization have clarity that we cannot vote out or elect out these inherently violent foundations of colonial oppression. So please join us in standing in solidarity with Native people as we cede our space and center Native voices and leadership as we move to learning what it means to repair harm done to Native and Indigenous people through education and beyond. And so with that said, we want to share this resource. I'm going to play the trailer of Dawnland, which is available to you. And if you scan this barcode, it actually gives you access to a teacher's guide for it as well, if you plan on using it in the classroom.
Would you like to come up to the witness stand?
They went into my home and picked up my children and placed them in a foster home.
This country had official policy to remove Native children from their homes and place them with white families so that they would learn how to be white.
But we're still here. And many of our people have never, ever shared their stories. Imagine being torn away from your parents and community.
I remember the station wagons pulling up.
Never talked about it in therapy. I played video games.
Maine has become the first state in the nation to form a Truth and Reconciliation Commission focusing on child welfare.
The truth hurts. The truth is very painful.
How come it took so long for you all to get a group together to see if they can help us? You can't heal someone that's gone through hell.
Usually, when a truth commission happens, there's a great deal of unrest in the society that's surrounding it. And here, the dominant culture is largely unaware.
People are saying, no, this is not genocide. Genocide is what happened at Auschwitz.
The reality is, it's been the attack of our culture, it's been the attempt to remove our culture, and you replace it with nothing.
What happened to my aunts, my grandparents and all that, it's still happening.
Tell me about your employment in state child welfare.
The judges didn't figure this was anything we had to do much about.
For the longest time, I was really afraid to even say that I was Indian.
You don't take 500 years of mistrust and wash it away with one commission.
I'm not sure where we're going to be able to gain your trust.
By all intents and purposes, you represent the perpetrator.
White privilege is not something I can get rid of. I think my obligation is to harness it.
Holy Michigan.
I never would have thought the state of Maine would ever engage with the Wabanaki on this level. We see it as something very deep, a necessary transition from being an occupier to being a neighbor.
So we encourage y'all to join us in watching this film and sharing it with your classrooms if you find. And we also want to make sure that you have access to some of the languaging that we will be engaging with today. And so again, if you can scan this QR code, I know some T4SJ comrades will also be placing the hyperlink in the chat as well. But this will take you to a glossary of terms that will be really important to understand and think about as we move forward in this conversation today. Feel free to share as well. And the last thing that I want to share before I turn it over to our comrade Mari is we also want to share this additional resource, which again, you can scan, and there will also be a link being shared in the chat for an idea or guide around reparations and Indigenous solidarity. It's a toolkit that was compiled by RG Land Reparations Group for folks that have access to land to support in education and resources sharing around land reparations. As we know, decolonization is not a metaphor, right? We actually do mean giving up what was stolen as well and figuring out what that can look like. And so we hope that these resources can support us in taking collective action towards land reparation and repatriation to Indigenous people in the ongoing struggle against colonization. It's not a comprehensive guide, but rather a starting point, right? We also ask that you commit to deepening your understanding of settler colonialism, interrogate it within you and around you. Do the work internally, collectively, materially, and systematically to repair harm. And reflect on your own privilege. Consider how you can stand firm in solidarity with Native communities as a lifelong commitment, not just in the month of November, y'all. But I know we know that. We know better, right? We want to commit to decentering ourselves and amplifying the voices of Native folks within our workplace, on our social media accounts, as well as among our own families, friendships, and relationships. Because as we know, it's not enough to just learn. We must also act. And so we want to build communities of shared purpose to organize in solidarity with Native folks as we move forward in really unpacking and unsettling settler colonialism. And so with that said, y'all, I also just want to name that, you know, this is all grassroots work. We don't get money for this work. We don't apply for any foundational money or grant money. And so everything that we do is through your donations. And our labor as organizers, which is we're a small core, it's all free labor. It's a labor of love. We don't get paid for this. We do it outside of our full-time jobs and caretaking, right? And we want to make sure that we pay folks. We've asked the folks who are sharing with us today to be in solidarity with us and to work with us and to you know, help us to understand what it would mean to do better, right? But they should also be compensated for that labor, and we want to pay them. So if you are able to, whatever you have is helpful, will help to help us to pay our interpreters, to pay our speakers, our panelists, our artists, right? We also want to just name that our work is really intentional. This is how we think of our work. This is our radar, right? We think of it at these 3 levels. When we think about transformation, we think about transformation of the self. We think about transformation at the community and the class and the school level. And then we think about it in the larger societal and structural level. And so we do this work with critical analysis, with a commitment to radical love and collectivism. Right? We believe in evolving a society based on equity and love, where everyone has access to resources for intellectual, spiritual, artistic, and emotional growth. We believe in realizing a just and caring culture that fosters relationships, precluding violence and incarceration. We are committed to abolition. We believe in addressing root causes of systems of oppression at individual, group, and societal levels. We believe in development based on the evolution of our individual and collective processes, and in evolving an education system that is responsive to the needs of the communities it serves and that promotes equitable access to resources and power. So please join us in supporting our work as we continue to do this virtually in a global pandemic during social uprisings and this electoral hot mess that we are navigating together, y'all. The work continues. It was happening before this historical, unprecedented moment, and it will continue through it and after. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my comrade Mari so they can introduce our presenter, our artist for the event, and Mari will then take over the rest of our session. Thank you, y'all.
Hello, hi everybody. So again, I'm Mariposa. So this is Firefly. He is Penobscot. Firefly is an amazing Penobscot and Jewish hybrid person born and raised in ancient Wabanaki territory, deeply influenced by the tradition of his peoples. He performs with traditional hand drum, shaker vocal songs, as well as cutting edge musical composition rooted in his own ancestral traditions.
Hello, my name is Firefly, and I am Penobscot from the Wabanaki Confederacy. I was born and raised at Indian Island, Maine, and I am going to share with you today some traditional music, some traditional singing and drumming. This is shared from my heart. It's an honor to be here, and thank you.
Hello, hi again. Welcome everyone to Unsettling the Settler Colonialism. Today's workshop. So I am MC, one of the MCs. I'm Mariposa. I am Mohawk and Southern Tagalog, two-spirit organizer, taking down racist symbols, paint it down, Life of Washington murals, and parent of a 4-year-old. And I am here with two amazing Indigenous peoples. First, via Indigenous protocol, I want to start off with our elder, and I want to start off with Auntie Charlene Francis. Auntie Charlene Francis is Penobscot and Ojibwe. Her pronouns are she, her. She is part of the Fisher and Bear clans, a member of the Penobscot Nation. She's a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, and maybe even the greatest. She's also a member of the Three Fires Mid-Lodge in Wisconsin. She was also employed by Flint Community Schools during the 70s as a resource person for Title IV, Title VI. Part A, better known as Indian Education. I was also the director, she was also the director of environmental and survival skills for inner city Native students, grades 7 through 12. One of the responsibilities of the resource person was to provide culturally sensitive training to educators and future educators. So we know that Auntie Charlene has been doing this work for a very long time, for decades, not only in maybe rural areas, but also in city areas as well. The next I want to intro is Dawn. And Dawn Neptune Adams is actually a good friend of mine. She's Penobscot, and I've known her for a very long time. I met Dawn when we walked across Turtle Island. The walk started in San Francisco and ended up in Washington, DC. And we walked across this land and we prayed and we did a lot of things. And during that time, while me and Dawn were walking across this land and praying for Mother Earth, we got to know each other and we got to talk story. And we noticed our stories were connected. And in some ways, our stories always stay connected. We got to reconnect when maybe 10 years ago, I can't remember how long ago, feels like an eternity ago, I went out to Dawn's homelands. I went to Indian Island and visited with folks, and it was beautiful. And I got to learn a lot more about Dawn, and I got to learn more about the Penobscot people, who, by the way, the first man of color who ever broke the color barrier for all people of color was a Penobscot Indian named Louis Alexis. And it was a great honor. I got to actually visit his grave and it was beautiful. Dawn is basically a journalist with Sunlight Media Collectives, a member of the Penobscot Nation. She also serves as the racial justice consultant to the Peace and Justice Center of Eastern Maine. When she's not battling polluters, plutocrats, or patriarchy, Dawn spends her time raising a preteen, which is a huge thing, and building amazing furniture. Dawn is a carpenter, and she dreams of one day where we can all eat salmon from the Penobscot River again and live together in peace. So that's what I want to share with you about Charlene and Dawn. If we have next slide, please. I'm also parenting right now at this current time. So sometimes there's a little bit more of a quiet. So today, so let's see, Auntie Charlene and Dawn, I see you both. Hello, hi. How you doing? Please unmute yourselves and I want to see your beautiful faces. So, I'm gonna read some of these questions, but Auntie Charlene, you're our elder, so you please first go ahead and talk. If you would like to say something first from the heart, or if you would like me to read the first question, I can do that as well. But you are our elder, so.
Well, I want to start with just one thing. I've been out of I haven't been in the education system for a long time, but yet I'm still a teacher. I'm not a senior citizen. I'm an elder, a proud elder, and I do believe I might be the greatest grandma around. I started in education. I've worked with Native people since probably the early 70s. Walked to Washington twice in 1978 and again a couple of years later, so that we finally have freedom of religion. They're supposed to be stop sterilizing, they're supposed to be. And the list, there were pages and pages of problems during those years. One of the things that I particularly am drawn to this is the diversity. I remember one time my sister-in-law told me, she says, I'm hoping that we can all be a melting pot one day, that melting pot dream. And I says, I'd rather not be a melting pot, because Native people, we fought for hundreds of years to be able to maintain our identity and to fight to be able to practice our culture again and our spirituality, to speak our languages. And I don't want to be part of a melting pot. My dream is to see people be respectful, kind, and loving with each other, regardless of race, orientation, or anything like that, because it's the diversity of the people that makes us strong and makes us interesting. And I love learning about other cultures. I'm not real keen on people taking things from our culture and using it for themselves, but I do think that by sharing builds an understanding. And I really enjoyed working in the urban setting. I've worked in both urban and reservation settings, but I found the need was really strong in the cities for our people to build roots. In fact, our students designed a shirt for our environmental and survival skills program, and it had a tree and it said, our roots are in this land. And my feeling is for Native people to be strong in who they are and to be able to withstand the strong winds, the things that we face, we need to build our roots, grab onto our culture, and to learn as much as we can about ourselves. One of the main things we did when we were sharing information in the schools, in the classrooms, we concentrated on those nations that were in our state, because there's so many tribes, nations in this country, and we're a lot different. It's like being European, to say we're native. That isn't really specific. That's saying I'm European. That doesn't work for us. So when we identify ourselves by our nation, that we identify ourselves as separate sovereign nations. We never run out of issues to fight, but we need, as Native people, to concentrate on one or two things throughout our lifetimes, because there are so many issues that we can wear ourselves out. And what happened in the 70s, Title IV Part A was originally designed to assimilate Native people. The government did a study and found that 3 generations, it would only take 3 generations away where we would be totally assimilated. So Title IV Part A originally was meant to assimilate our children. All of our Title IV monies were going into tutoring in Flint schools. We have 52 schools in our system, and all of the money was going into that. what we had then were telephones. That's what we had. But through Title IV, we started communicating throughout the country on the phones, and we started building a network. And that was how we started getting unified. And we also watched the Black movement. And that's how we started, AIM started, was by watching the Black movement back then, Martin Luther King and all that. So we copied for the longest walk. It's been a struggle. The movie that the niece Dawn made, Dawnland, I saw the pain. I felt the pain of our women. Our women are suffering and need to be empowered to step into being the women they are meant to be. So that's primarily why I'm here. I don't know what I can offer in this setting, but I'll do what I can. Chimigwech.
You are offering us a lot, and you are schooling us with your eldership. So thank you. So I'm gonna ask the first question, and whatever we feel, we're just gonna have a conversation.
Oh, good.
Let's just imagine it's just me, you, and Don. We're just all in a room. People just happen to be around listening.
We got cookies, right?
Yeah, we got cookies.
Okay, all right.
Cookies. For any diabetics who come in the room. There you go. So the first question is, what does it mean to unsettle settler colonialism? So again, I'm going to repeat it one more time. What does it mean to unsettle settler colonialism? And I would love to pass that question on to you first, Dawn, so we can first hear your beautiful voice and hear some of your thoughts. And then the second question is also, can you speak to the legacies of American Indian boarding schools and the child welfare system and how the impacts of these legacies exist today in our public education system? So Dawn, take it away, my friend.
Madi, it is such an honor to be here with you and to be with Teachers for Social Justice. Thank you all so much for having me and for having my treasured auntie with you and with all of us today. I'd like to introduce myself in my language. Kwe and Louise Don Neptune Adams, Nijiawan Benawabskewi, Nigiwigi Brewer. I just said, hello, my name is Dawn Neptune Adams. I am Penobscot and I live in Brewer. That is a win for me, being able to introduce myself in my own language, because when I was 4 years old, that language was violently washed out of my mouth with soap. I was placed in foster care just a little bit before that. And the foster parents, especially the foster mother, were very much part of the kill the Indian to save the man mentality. We can look back on generations of removal of children from their homes and their communities and their families, and we can see that that was assimilation as intent and profit for incentive. We can see that from the very beginning of colonization here. And it took many forms throughout settler colonial history. It took the form first of outright bloody genocide here on Wabanaki territory. There was a bounty paid for scalps of my ancestors. There were different prices for men, women, and children. And many of our ancestors were sold into slavery as well. After that, of course, there was the boarding school era. There was the Indian Adoption Act of the 1950s. There was, when the boarding schools closed, of course, throughout all of it, there was the taking of children, and putting them in non-native foster homes where we were sometimes, we had the Indian beat out of us, or at least they tried. Mari, can you remind me of the question one more time?
Yeah, you were actually answering the question, but I'll definitely remind you. So the first one is, what does it mean to unsettle or settler colonialism, which is a little bit of what you're talking about. And then the second is, can you speak to the legacies of American Indian boarding schools and the child welfare system and how the impacts of those legacies exist today in public education, which is what you were doing with talking about with speaking your own story about what happened to you at 4. And then, so please continue.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that. For accessibility, I'd like to give a description of myself. This is something that is new to me, but something that is absolutely necessary. I am a light-skinned Penobscot woman. I have black hair. I'm wearing a teal shirt and a teal blazer, and I'm wearing red lipstick because it makes me feel powerful. Behind me, I have a painting on the wall. It is a dock over the water headed toward the sunrise. And this is where I live, in the Dawnland. We are the people of the dawn, the Wabanaki. So unsettling settler colonialism, I believe that in our circles and in society, we must push back against settler colonialism and its associated ologies and isms at every level. One of the things that is most useful in pushing back against settler colonialism is solidarity. Solidarity with our comrades in the struggle. And this is something that has been beautifully demonstrated during this time of uprising. Big shout out to the Black and Brown women who are leading this current uprising. And my respect, mad respect to you all. So how do we push back? Earlier, before the program started, we had music, and one of the big things that hit me while I was hurriedly putting my makeup on was the phrase, "Our existence is our resistance." And it's true. It's so very true that because we are still here, we are sort of laughing in the face of settler colonialism. We have shown that that old adage is true. They tried to bury us, but they did not know that we were seeds. I am so honored that Auntie Shar has joined us in this talk. She is an inspiration to me, and she is who I run to when I need guidance. And she is a lot more of a badass than even I know. Brag about herself. So residential school on both sides of my mother's family, both her mother and her father, there are ancestors of ours who were sent to Carlisle Indian boarding school. And we can trace some of our intergenerational trauma back to those ancestors. No matter how much someone in my family has said that our shared ancestor enjoyed their time at Carlisle or benefited from what they learned there, we can look back at what happened when they arrived home and what happened with their children, and see that the attempted erasure of our culture had an effect. And we're still struggling with that intergenerational trauma today. I'm trying not to center myself in this, but in the last 5 years, I've been on a healing journey. I will let you know that I did not want to give a statement to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Come closer. My child is offering up the therapy cat. There we go. Thank you, Wally. My child is very perceptive, and also knows me very well, and knows that when I talk about these things, I do benefit from the love and attention of the therapy cat, and also from my child. So as I was saying, when I was asked to give a statement to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, I was reluctant to do so. I didn't want to open up that can of worms. For one thing, I knew that there was a lot of things, a lot of trauma that I hadn't addressed, and I thought I was doing just fine. If I kept stuffing it down, if I kept, we're all struggling to survive capitalism, and it's very difficult. And when we have to take time out to process trauma or just to hide, to deal with those things, anyway, I really didn't want to do it. I didn't want to be in the movie. But what convinced me to do so was knowing that these things are still happening today. Settler colonialism is still taking our children. And I felt that if there was anything I could do to stop this and to keep it from happening to other people, that's what I needed to do. Your luck. Thank you.
Thank you for your beautiful words, Dawn. And just as a little bit, when I hear you speak, one thing I think about is that, what I thought was amazing about the Dawnland movie is that Maine, that is the only state to actually hold a truth and reconciliation process around child welfare. It is the first, and so far, no one else is doing it, right? In any other state. And so I think it's a great example of a process folks can start to go through to start to sift through these things of settler colonialism, really putting the truth out there and these legacies and impacts of colonialism and how it impacts folks today. So one thing I just wanted to share is when I visited Indian Island, and Dawn took me there, which is the Penobscot Reservation out there. We went to the Boys and Girls Club right there on the res. And, I like to talk, so I do talk my talk. And I saw a group of youth, and, I'm an educator. So I bet just like you, some educators watching right now, you go talk to the youth because the youth speak the truth, right? So I saw a group of kids and teenagers. I was like, hey, what's up? What y'all doing? They're like, what's you guys? Oh, I'm Mohawk and Filipino. They're, oh, really? And they said, oh, well, I'm, this. And they're all different Wabanaki tribes, right? And then I was like, yes, well, tell me about y'all's like issues out here. What do you all go through? What are issues prevalent to people out here? And the first thing they told me, and this was like way before this movie was ever coming into fruition or even started to be made or anything like that. They said the CPS. And I said, what do you mean about CPS? They said, they steal our kids. They steal our kids here on Indian Island. CPS will come and swoop them up and take them into foster care. And I said, really? Like that? And they're like, yeah, so much where sometimes you can see people throw eggs at the CPS cars because we want them off, Indian Island, because we know what that means. That means that's the loss of a Native child, right? And we don't know if we're going to get them back. And so for these youth, right? Teenagers, they were young teenagers, maybe 14, 15, right? Just telling me, you know, I thought that really hit me deep, and I never forgot that. And I might have forgot those youths' names, but I never forgot those stories that they told me. And they kept going more deep, tell me more stories that how child welfare systems has affected their families, not just historically, but contemporarily. And I think that's really important because there's a common link with all three of us. We all walked across this land for justice for Native Americans, right? For our issues. Charlene, you walked in 1978. Me and Don, we walked decades later to honor the work that you all did and to continue that work and continue that legacy. And out of those walks came out important pieces of legislation. And one was, the ICWA, which is the Indian Child Welfare Act. So there's an actual piece of legislation that it doesn't always get followed, but there is a law that says if a child is Native or of Native descent, they don't even have to be enrolled. They could just also be of descent, that they can't be adopted out of the tribe after all these things. It has to take several tiers for them to actually get to be adopted out of their tribe. And that's the reason, because of stuff that happened with you, Dawn, and stuff that happened with, our relatives and our tribes and our peoples and our sovereign nations all across Turtle Island. And I think that's important to point out that child welfare system and the interaction with CPS, foster care systems, American Indian children, started actually with what the US government calls public education, right? So we know that Harvard, the founding of Harvard was an Indian boarding school, which means that basically it was a place where white colonizers would steal Native children, kidnap them, and take them to Harvard and be like, we're gonna, kill the Indian, save the man, right? Just like Don was talking about. And to know that that's the root of the US public education system, how does that, as the educators are watching, right? How is that part of their analysis when they're teaching their children, when they're teaching their youth, whether those youth are Native or not, right? So last year, here in San Francisco, one of my friends, she's a white parent, she sent me a picture of her kindergartner's coloring book here in San Francisco Unified School District. And it was a picture of Pocahontas in like some type of, stereotypical settler colonial massacre Thanksgiving scene. And it said, which one of these things don't belong, or things like that, or here's some apples and oranges, and and it literally painted Pocahontas as this kind of, how can I explain it? This mythos, right? Very, very like, a Disney Pocahontas. And it was really sad. And another friend within a week shared me a screenshot of the SFUSD textbook here in San Francisco, Progressive San Francisco, where it said Pocahontas was a willing captive, right? Like literally said that. Instead of framing it as Pocahontas was one of the first missing and murdered Native women, and how, things were happening to her, and framing it within a settler colonial framework instead. So that stuff happens all the time, right? And even here in California, we had every fourth grader used to have to do this thing called the Mission Project. So missionization is how they did colonization out here in California. Missions are just plantations, right? We even have a neighborhood called the Mission, which is basically saying the plantation. Here in San Francisco, I actually live there. And we barely as a state got rid of that right now. And for years, there would be so many American Indian parents who would be like, oh my God, that fourth grade mission project, I don't know what to do when we get to fourth grade. And it was this sense of like anxiety and PTSD you could see in different American Indian students and also in parents. So what I want to throw out with you, Auntie Charlene, since you have such amazing background, especially with Indian education. We have an Indian education program out here, actually here in San Francisco in our school district. But when we think about the impacts of boarding schools, which is the foundation of public schools and public education, how can we continue to unsettle or settle colonialism within our current schools today, from your perspective? You're still on mute.
Okay, I'm unmuted. I'm not really sure what you're asking me. Yeah, can you?
Yeah, so what I'm asking is, so we have over 200 educators right now watching. In their classrooms, what can they do, right? And how can they change the narrative, right? This settler colonial narrative. And so our public education is founded in colonialism, right? The first schools were boarding schools, were created to kidnap Indian students and to kill off the Indianness, So how can we change that, where education is actually empowering and not disempowering, not just to Native people, but to all the students learning about Native peoples?
Okay, one of the things that we insisted on, parents through that program, was we tied up the school's phones until we got culture and things like that introduced. But I started a program. It was unlearning Native. It was called probably Unlearning Indian Stereotypes, not Native Stereotypes. But it was unlearning Native stereotypes. It was in a booklet form, in a film. And I started using that. And also I was librarian at one time at one of the elementary schools. So I was allowed to go through and pull some books out that showed Richard Scarry as an example. He has little animals dressed up in headdresses and things like that. A lot of the children's books used Native images in a not so kind way. So we would pull these books out, and when we would do sensitivity training, we'd use these books that we didn't want our children to look at because it made them feel bad about themselves in some way. But we used them for educators to point out that these aren't necessarily good books to use. We also covered holidays and things like that. It was teaching the differences in our children so that the educators could be aware of those things. For example, eye contact was a big thing. That was hard for me in university too, when I was told I had to stand like 3 feet away, well, closer than the personal space, 3 feet, and stare into someone's eyes, and it made me physically ill. Because I believe that it's only the European culture, Caucasian culture, that calls for direct eye contact when they talk. And so that's how we were to look at us when you talk, look at us in the eye. Otherwise it's seen as hiding things or, like that. And so a lot of our kids in the school, they might not know their own culture and customs and things like that. And educators sometimes assume that they do. Sometimes we have to think about the language that we use. For example, a kindergarten teacher told a friend's little son to sit Indian style in her classroom. So he went over and he sat in a chair. And the teacher asked him what he was doing, and he says, "This is how we sit." So there's those things. There's things that we do, like passing a certain direction. When we're growing up, people don't say this is Native behavior, eh? So when you're in a city environment, you don't know that you're doing Native things in your home because no one says, "Hey, that's Native." You just think that's normal for everyone. And it's when you get about 10, 11 years old is when you start noticing that there's a difference. I was raised, we left this community, this reservation where I'm on now, when I was about 5, 6 years old. So I was in mainly non-native settings. So I knew I was different, but in 5th grade, it was when it really hit. When I got the woo-woo-woo, a teacher asked how many Native kids were in the class, and there were 2 of us, and then we got the woo-woo-woo things. And so that pulls us back. One of the things we found is our kids do extremely well in grades K through 6th grade. Once they get it into junior high, and I'm sure the statistics are the same, that we have the highest dropout rates of everyone in the country. I'm pretty sure it hasn't changed in the last 40, 50 years. I'm pretty sure it's still low like that. So we found out that when they got into junior high, their grades started going down. Some of our kids, including one of my own sons, dropped out in 8th grade. And I said, someone's going to notice, and I'm going to get in trouble for you not going to school. No one noticed, which is typical for minority children in a dominant society. So we worked that way, and we used the, I like unifying words instead of me, I, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, we started this environmental and survival skills program because it was illegal to teach spirituality and a lot of things to the students. But when you're out in the bush, out in the woods, a lot of things slip by. And so we worked with those kids. I've had them for 6 years, from grade 7 until they graduated. And not one, well, there was one dropout, but it was only so she could move to Cherokee to be with her grandmother. Our inner city kids have a lot of struggles. They witness shootings, all kinds of things. One watched her father kill her little brother, things like that. So they needed a support system, and the school system I was in had 52 schools. And I was initially hired to find all of our native schools in that system. And we came up with over 1,000 of them. And they're all floating around because they didn't contact with each other. So we started pulling them together. They formed a support group, and they graduated. They built their self-confidence, their leadership skills, their self-confidence. They knew who they were and where they came from and where they were going, and their grades improved. And that was the best job I ever had in my life, and I got paid to do it. That was the bonus.
That's amazing work. Thank you, Auntie Charlene, for sharing that. I think that just shows how, especially in Indigenous communities, us coming together and us being able to learn from each other, especially in urban environments, is beneficial to our health and our well-being. And so we're going to transition right now into a bio break. If I could have the slide up. I'm just going to show this real quick. So right now, I want you to feel free to get some water, do what you got to do. We're going to do the Padlet too. I also would love people to watch. This is my kid's favorite cartoon called Molly of Denali. And this cartoon is the only cartoon I've ever seen that talks about the impact of boarding schools in a kid's format. So this is something that elementary school teachers could definitely use to talk about boarding schools in their own classroom. If we could please play the clip, and please use your bio break.
Masik Cho, thank you for inviting us in.
You are welcome. Gee, but your grandpa had a real good voice and the best sense of humor. He sure joked around lots.
Like me.
He was always singing. So much singing. Too much singing.
That's like Molly, too. If he loves singing so much, why did he give you his drum?
At the school, we weren't allowed to sing the songs of our people. It was forbidden. They only wanted us to sing new songs, their songs, in English. We were made to feel bad about who we were, of the way our people did things. Your grandfather, he did not like that. He was proud of his family. He loved our traditions. So your grandpa, he said, if I can't sing our songs, I just won't sing anymore. Ever. A lot of kids did the same. That's why so many of us stopped using our language and singing our songs.
I'm so sorry that happened to you, and to Grandpa.
Thankfully, things have changed since then. We honor our traditions and can be proud of them.
Maybe if you give your grandpa back his drum, his songs will come back too.
Hey, there you are. You ready to sing?
Ready. And maybe you will be too, because...
Oh, Molly.
Tui and I found your friend in the picture and brought back your drum. Do you have your songs again?
I left them so far behind. They'll need to find their way back to me.
That's okay, Chada. I'm just glad we could find it for you. Molly, we're next! Alia oh hey hey ehu hey hey Alia oh hey hey ehu hey la he la ho de ehu Seiga so delatsi Seiga so delatsi la he la ho de
La ela están. Ehu hey. Alia oh hey Ehu hey.
And just like that, Grandpa's songs came back to him. And now, he's teaching all his songs to us. Ready, Grandpa?
Tui! Hanai! Come! Alia oh hey Ehu hey.
Now that your big eyes are finally opened, now that you're wondering how must they feel, meaning them that you've chased across America's movie screens. Now that you're wondering how can it be real that the ones you've called colorful, noble, and proud in your school propaganda, they starve in their splendor. You've asked for my comment, I simply will render. My country, 'tis of thy people you're dying. Now that the longhouses breed superstition, you force us to send
our toddlers away to your schools where they're taught to despise their traditions, forbid them their languages, then further say that American history really began when Columbus set sail out of Europe, and stress that the nation of leeches that conquered this land are the biggest and bravest and boldest and best. And yet where in your history books is the tale of the genocide basic to this country's birth, of the preachers who lied, how the Bill of Rights failed, how a nation of patriots returned to their earth? And where will it tell of the Liberty Bell as it rang with a thud over Kinzua mud, and the brave Uncle Sam in Alaska this year? My country, 'tis all thy people, you're dying. Hear how the bargain was made for the West, with her shivering children in 0 degrees. Blankets for your land, so the treaties attest. Ah, well, blankets for land is a bargain indeed. And the blankets were those Uncle Sam had collected from smallpox disease, dying soldiers that day. And the tribes were wiped out, and the history books censored. 100 years of your statesmen have felt it's better this way. Yet a few of the conquered have somehow survived. Their blood runs the redder, though genes have been paled. From the Grand Canyon's caverns to Craven sad hills, the wounded, the losers, the robbed sing their tale. From Los Angeles County to upstate New York, the white nation fattens while others grow lean. Ah, the tricked and evicted, they know what I mean. My country, 'tis all thy people, you're dying. The past, it just crumbled. The future just threatens. Our lifeblood is shut up in your chemical tanks. And now here you come, bill of sale in your hand, and surprise in your eyes that we're lacking in thanks for the blessings of civilization you've brought us, the lessons you've taught us, the ruin you've wrought us. Oh, see what our trust in America's bought us. My country, 'tis all thy people, you're dying. Now that the pride of the sires receives charity, now that we're harmless and safe behind laws, now that my life's to be known as your heritage, now that even the graves have been robbed, now that our own chosen way is a novelty, hands on our hearts, we salute you, your victory. Choke on your blue, white, and scarlet hypocrisy, pitying the blindness, for you've never seen that the eagles of war, whose wings lent you glory, they were never no more than carrion crows. Pushed the wrens from their nest, stole their eggs, changed their story. The mockingbird sings it, It's all that she knows. Ah, what can I do? Say a powerless few with a lump in your throat and a tear in your eye. Can't you see that their poverty's profiting you? My country, 'tis all thy people, you're dying.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. If you have not filled out the Padlet, please feel free to fill out the Padlet still. You will have another opportunity to fill that out as well. Please feel free. Hope you all got to take care of yourselves. So here we go. Wait, real quick. I have to open up my questions and escape out of here. Oh, here we go. So I got to read some of y'all, what you all wrote in the Padlet. I love, just so you know, Dawn and Charlene, most of the people, when it was question number 1, where it said something powerful for me has been, I think I saw at least 5, 6, maybe 7 times where people said listening to Dawn and Auntie Charlene's stories and their words. So I just wanted to call that out. That is really powerful. Now looking, forward, right? So we're thinking about, this workshop. This workshop is called Unsettling the Settler Colonialism, right? Specifically thinking about it in our public education systems, in our child welfare, in our lives, in our homes, right? And moving forward into the future. So how can we get this done, right? And so what I want us to start thinking about are, and Auntie Charlene, you talked a little bit about it, but within the scope of just Native children and what you personally did as an educator. Like you said, we're all educators. But I want us to think about what are ways that educators should be making space for full humanity and complexity of Native and Indigenous students and communities, right? And that is a huge question. So I first want to just break that down a little bit. So what are ways educators should be making space for the full humanity and complexity, right, of Native and or Indigenous students and their communities? So that is like, I think, a 3-part question within that. And I see also in the Padlet, a lot of educators kept asking for resources, curriculum, videos, everything we've been sharing with you all. And we just shared like 3 videos right now. We shared some videos in the beginning. We've been sharing out curriculum guides. Dawn has a curriculum guide. So make sure you got your handy phone. Who got their phone? Here's my phone. You can't see it, but you got your phone. And when you see that little box that looks like all techie or whatever, I don't explain, get your cell phone, you turn on the camera app and you click on it, it will pop up a link. So, and that link will take you to all these resources. Also, Nicole is being amazing. And in the chat box is also adding links in there too from what we're showing to you. So I want to make sure that you all educators are getting those resources, because some of you are asking for them and I'm like, wait, but we're providing them right now in real time. So let's go with Dawn. So, Dawn, one thing we talked about with this workshop and upcoming is you really want to talk about a touch base, and you did a little bit, right? In terms of public education and your experience with the public education systems. And I wanted to talk about what are spaces and ways that we can be making full, space for the full humanity and complexity of Native and Indigenous students and communities. And you can even talk about a little bit about your own experience with unschooling your own child, as well. And so I wanted you to just be able to share from the heart there and how you came to that decision, right? And ways that, now that educators could do a better job compared to, the decades of settler colonialism that has happened. And then Auntie Charlene, I would love if you could answer as well after too. So Dawn, take it away. You were on mute.
So one of the most useful tools I've found for educating children and educating ourselves is the Indigenous Peoples' History of the United States. I think it's written by Roxanne Ortiz. There is an adult version, but there is also a version for students. My child is 11 years old and unschooled. And my child is also offering me a cookie right now. He is all about the self-care. Yes, so learning the truth about our history and how it has shaped the way we are today and how we interact with the world today is an important tool in our arsenal against settler colonialism. When we have, there was a quote by Howard Zinn that said, if you don't have history, it's as if you were born yesterday. And if you were born yesterday, you have no idea what the oppressor has done. You have no way to call them on it. But with a little history, it doesn't prove that your government is lying to you today. It just asks you to inquire if it is. And I think that's one of the most powerful things that we can do is to learn true history and to pass that on to our children, whether these are your biological children or adopted children or children you are teaching in the classroom. I know that some of the most influential people in my life as a child were teachers. At home, I was in my foster home. I was not given a lot of love, and I kind of adopted my teachers, except for fourth grade. I had fourth and fifth grade were both very, very difficult. I had teachers who were racist, and you know, they made no secret that they disliked me and disliked, you know, just who I was. So there's a lot of misunderstanding that happens. I don't think that set out to teach us things that aren't true. I think we're all products of the propaganda that we are fed. My first encounter with this as a parent, I went to the daycare where my child had to stay while I worked. And he was 18 months old, maybe almost 2, somewhere between 18 months and 2. It's the time when settler colonialism celebrates what they call Thanksgiving and what we call Thanks-taking. And my child was dressed up like a Puritan. He had a cardboard hat on with the big buckle. And I was horrified. You know, I was kind of expecting the cardboard or construction paper feather headdress. You know, that's been a common thing. But to see my child dressed up as a Puritan for a celebration of Thanks-taking was, yeah, I can't even convey the horror that I felt. My child is obviously very much Native, Penobscot and Choctaw, and what I blurted out to the teachers there in this preschool slash childcare place was, how dare you? My child's ancestors are probably rolling in their graves right now. I couldn't take my child out of that daycare, though. I was forced to keep them there. I was on what's called TANF, temporary assistance for needy families. I was in college, and I was volunteering and going to college. And that was how my childcare was paid, was through this TANF system. If I had taken my child out of this daycare, I wouldn't have been able to do college or volunteer. Yeah, so it was kind of like economic blackmail, because that $300 that they gave me every month would have been gone. My childcare would have been gone, and I didn't know how I would survive otherwise. I'm sure that many Indigenous people, including Penobscot people, have similar stories about, dealing with these kind of things within the classroom. My first parent-teacher conference as a parent was pre-K, and I learned that my child had been refusing to say the Pledge of Allegiance. This made me feel really proud. We have many friends who are very radical, not only Indigenous and Black and Brown friends, but friends who are descendants of the original colonizers here. And he has learned from many of them. The refusal to say the Pledge of Allegiance was a surprise to me, but really not. What was a surprise to me was that he hadn't told me. Wally, could you not?
Sorry.
Excuse me. My child is wrestling with the cat.
Poor kitty's just trying to take a nap.
So there have been instances. My child has been in public schools for pre-K, for kindergarten, and for half of 4th grade, and is otherwise unschooled. The reason I took them out of public school was because of the bullying. And it wasn't just bullying from peers, but bullying from these teachers in school. In kindergarten, when my child refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance, he was told, well, you should say the Pledge of Allegiance because you're Native American. You're more American than any of us.
Oh, no, that was 4th grade.
That was 4th grade?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my apologies. That wasn't kindergarten. That was 4th grade.
And, they shouldn't even have said that because it's 2020.
Wally relates that they shouldn't have even said that because we are in the day and age that we are now. These are our white, upper white middle class teachers. We exist in our Wabanaki territory, but it is 95% white here. When I was growing up, it was very rare to see a Black or brown person. I grew up in a white upper middle class neighborhood, which is where I was placed in foster care. In my high school alone, there were 2 Black people and 2 Penobscot people. And you have met the 2 Penobscot people here today. In high school, it was myself and Firefly. And that was it. So we very rarely saw ourselves reflected in the teachers. And what we were told in school was propaganda from the settler colonial, patriarchal, Christian, imperialist, patriarchal state. I'm forgetting the original question, aren't I?
I think you answered most of it. It was basically about like, how can we move into the future, right? Everything we've talked about, right? And how we have a bunch of educators listening. How can we move forward, right? And start to really unsettle the settler colonialism, right? And how can we make full space for the contemporary setting and the full humanity of Indigenous peoples today, right? And in our either, tribal communities or our urban, communities, right? And how can we do that? And I think you talked a lot about that, right? And why it was important for you with, like how Wally is saying in the background. Hi, Wally, by the way. You know what I'm saying? And, talking about how like now, even today in 2020, Wally is being told in a public education setting that, well, you need to say this pledge, right? And what does that mean for an Indigenous person to be told to do that, right? That's like, just like boarding schools all over again, right?
Mm-hmm.
You better say this pledge. You better say this penitence or whatever, right? Because this is American and this is good and this is, all that type of stuff. So I feel like you actually answered the question already, Dawn.
Oh, good. We of all people, the Black, Brown, and Indigenous people who are here today, we know that liberty and justice for all is a lie and has been from the very beginning.
Yeah, totally. And you know what I think is, I hear a lot of people asking about like in the chat, trying to keep up with the chat while you all are talking too. At the same time, people are like, oh, I want this curriculum resource and this kind of resource and this. But I also want to say one thing that's really amazing about listening from an Indigenous elder and an Indigenous cousin like Dawn is that a lot of times in Indigenous cultures, you just talk story. And that's how you learn. You learn through people's stories, right? So sometimes not always curriculum, sometimes not always a video. So it's like right here, you all are curriculum. I am curriculum. We are teaching each other and we are all growing. So I want to say that's amazing as well. Just as much as that link from that webinar. Don't worry, everybody, you will get all your links. We will take care of you. What I would love to do though, is move into Q&A, if that's okay with you, Auntie Charlene. And Dawn, because there's some people writing some really good questions up in here. So let's see. Okay. So I guess I'm just gonna pull the questions out of the chat instead of people asking them. So if you want to write a question to Charlene and Dawn, just type it in the chat right now. Or if you want to ask a question overall. But I see one question from Karen Zapata. It says, in what ways are we supporting our students who are resisting? So I'm thinking they're saying about students who are, so I think Karen wrote this when you were talking about when Wally was resisting against the teacher saying like, hey, you want me to, say this pledge, but I'm not going to do that, right? So in what ways can teachers support students who are resisting already against this settler colonial narrative? And then Auntie Charlene, I mixed two together. I'm so sorry. Auntie Charlene, can you answer that? Especially since you had an amazing program. In what ways did you support those Native students who were already resisting those public education myths and false truths?
With the truth.
There you go. We already answered it. There you go. Done.
One of the things I have issue with, I really appreciate having Native Month or Native American Month, whatever they call it now. But I remember when we only had one day and my dad and I laughed and says, a dog has a week and we only have a day. So now we have a whole month, and one of my sisters, shared that information with me, but I was angry about it because I says, why the month of November? November's the only time Native people are ever thought about. And this thing in school with the Thanksgiving problems and dressing up like little pilgrims and cowboys and Indians or whatever. Kids can handle the truth. It's like when I tried to explain how the government would keep taking things from us. I'd give the students a sheet of paper and says, this is your territory. So then I'd look at him, I'd say, oh, but I found some oil on there, so I'm going to have to take this piece, and I'd rip a piece off. And sometime it'd go by, oh, some settlers need this land here to live on, so we're going to take this piece of land. And pretty soon those kids, they'd only have a little tiny piece of paper left. They understand the truth, and if we do our research and give them the truth, they understand that. We don't have to do the blood and gore, but what we focused on primarily were the contributions that Native people made to this country. That was our focus, because we wanted to share that positive with both Native people and non-Native people. What Dawn was saying about that Pledge of Allegiance, I went to the teachers directly and I told them my child will not be saying that because it's a lie. And when all people are treated the same, then they can say it, but until then, no. So I don't know if that helps, but
no, I think
truth.
You answered it perfectly, because actually there was a question in the Palette. One of the teachers asked, they just had Indigenous Peoples Day, and they said they shared a video with their kindergartners, and they said, what more could we have done? And I think you answered it, right? What more you could have done, I guess, to that teacher who talked about it, is that you teach the truth every day. Now, you don't just bring up Indigenous peoples just on Indigenous Peoples Day or around that time, right? You speak the truth all year round. We shouldn't only talk about it in November or on that one day in October, right? We talk about the truth all the time. And that's the best way when we're talking about doing this work. And I want to get back into real quick. So I see some questions. A lot of people are asking questions if they're a settler or not. In the thing, it says a question you have for the panelists. And so I want to go back to people that there is, if someone could type in the chat, we have a list of definitions of settler colonialism, what is settler, all these different things. And one of the mods can put that in the chat. But I want to urge all the people asking that question to read the list of definitions first. And then if you still don't have the answer to your question, re-ask if you are still a settler or not. Because I think that's a question for you to answer, right? Like, I'm not going to tell you who you are, right? Just like you ain't going to tell me who I am. But if you go based on the definition, it clearly lays out about what settler colonialism is, what settler privilege is, and if you hold settler privilege or not. And then going into that, I thought there was a really interesting question that, here we go. Let's see. Well, you talked about that already, Auntie Charlene. Community resources. There was one about the American dream, the myth of the American dream. So a teacher asked, would the American dream would it still exist if it wasn't for colonialism and or capitalism? So I'm going to focus more back on colonialism, even though I think there are huge connections to capitalism. But what I want to say is about this myth of the American dream, and we both could talk about it. How has this myth of the American dream impacted Native American peoples? And I'm just going to add one thing, and then Auntie Charlene and or Dawn, you can answer it too. So I'd say one thing with the myth of the American dream is that when folks from other countries come here, the myth of American dream teaches you that no one else lived here before, right? That this was just like some barren wasteland and nobody was doing anything with it. And maybe there were some savages there, right? That's the myth of the American dream, right? that you can come here, you can make yourself and be anything. And when you come here, you forget that you're actually on someone's land, right? And that you are a guest upon this land, right? And so I think that's something that's part of it, and it's definitely tied to colonialism. I think the American dream is a way that people continue settler colonialism. And maybe I see both of you shaking your heads, yes. I'm going to Charlene and Dawn, but I'm going to let either one of you, whoever wants to go first, you could talk about how that myth of the American dream is tied to settler colonialism, right? And how it produces the settler narrative and produces the settler privilege. One way I always say is, one thing I noticed here in San Francisco, I'll give you a really quick example, is I meet all the time people who aren't Native American who tell me all the time, like, oh, I'm a native. I'm like, you a native? Really? From where? They're like, here, from the city. I'm a native from the city. I'm like, oh, okay. You're saying you were born and raised here. That's different, but you're not Native and you're not Indigenous to Ramaytush Ohlone homelands, because the framework is different, right? So they're coming from a framework of, hey, I'm a Native here, but really what they're trying to say is I'm born and raised here, right? Which is different saying than I'm Native and I'm Indigenous to this land, right? And so that's a part of, the settler colonialism that we get to break down and really think about. So Auntie Charlene or Dawn, if you want to talk about ways that the American dream is tied to capitalism and or colonialism, that would be great. And that might be our last question. If we have room for one more, I will definitely include it.
I actually prefer First Nation rather than Native or American Indian or anything like that. Indigenous or First Nation. First Nation says it for me. We were here first and we're still here. So that's my feeling on that. I'll let the niece chat for a bit.
Thank you, Auntie. John, I think you're still muted if you wanted to talk.
Well, dang, I just said a really good couple of sentences there. Let me see if I can remember what I said. Capitalism is a system of oppression, and it oppresses us all. We have this in common. We hear a lot of our non-Native and non-Black and Brown relatives say no war but class war. And that's usually when they're losing an argument about the importance of race and throwing around words like identity politics and, we're all oppressed. But the fact of the matter is that capitalism of us all at different levels. Capitalism started oppression with the Black, Brown, and Indigenous people first. This country, no matter what beautiful words it uses to describe itself, was built on genocide and the enslavement of our Black and Brown brothers and sisters. But it is true that class warfare is absolutely necessary at this time because they're coming for us all. They just start with the Black, Brown, and Indigenous people because I think maybe it's believed that nobody will how do I even put this? It's a theory, but and I have seen it disproven in this land that is now called Maine, Wabanaki, where oppressors believe that if they are oppressing Black, Brown, and Indigenous people that are white or European settler descendant relatives will not stand up for us. And what I'm seeing here, as well as some really intense alt-right transgressions, what I am seeing is a beautiful solidarity. When the Penobscot people put out a call for help and solidarity, it is answered. We have an ongoing fight with the state of Maine right now, and they are trying to take over control of our ancestral river. And there are thousands and thousands of people here who are not Penobscot, who stand with us in solidarity. And I think that's a beautiful thing. The fact of the matter is, capitalism is a system whose time has come to die. What we are experiencing in the world right now is the death throes of that old paradigm and the birthing pains of a new one. And I am honored to be standing with you at this time and place. And may it be good for us all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dawn, and thank you, Auntie Charlene. This was such an honor. And, you know, I just want to say thank you for all your words and everything you all shared with me. I loved having this conversation with you all. To all the educators watching, I know that you all have like 1,000 more questions, right? Because it's not every day we get to have a space like this where educators get to learn actually one-on-one from Indigenous peoples. But what I wanted to say is, feel free to go through all the resources we have given you and will continue to give you. We also have socials and websites that you can also follow. Dawn, me, I think Auntie Charlene, you might be on, there's some way to, well, you know, you can follow Dawn and Dawn will get you to Auntie Charlene and everything. But all of you asked a lot of questions, like what's the right term, Native American or this, and all these beautiful, you know, I think at least like 20 or 25 more questions we didn't get to go through. What I want to say is just sit with those questions. And it's okay that those questions are unanswered right now, and go through all those resources. And if you go through every resource we shared in every video and every curriculum and you still have those questions, then hit us up. Okay? So I'm going to pass it on to Farima, Dr. Farima. Where are you?
I'm right here.
Oh, beautiful. And I just again say thank you so much to Teacher for Social Justice for, you know, giving us your space, right? Because we just literally took over y'all's. We did what they call a takeover on Instagram. We just did an Indigenous takeover and everything. And this was beautiful. And sending much love to you all out there in Wabanaki territory. Much love to Indian Island, out from Ramaytush territory out here.
Thank you so much, Madi. Thank you so much, Auntie Charlene, Cousin Don. Just so much gratitude for y'all. Just so much appreciation for everything that you so gracefully shared. You didn't have to, but that was love right there. And so I just want to say thank you so much on behalf of the Teachers for Social Justice, on behalf of all the educators, organizers on this call who joined us. For folks who are on the Zoom, if you could just show some love to Madi, Auntie Charlene, and to Cousin Don in the chat, we would greatly appreciate it. Let them know how much we appreciate them. Just so many important takeaways. I also just want to share, y'all, you know, we're not going to solve unsettling settler colonialism in one panel. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think it's important for us to recognize that. So for some of us, this is just the beginning of our journey. For others, this is a continuation of this journey. For others, you know, we need some humility in the ways that we move through this work. And so I want to say that we will have a follow-up to this session where we can reflect and build together. This is the R&B session. And in this R&B session, this is where we can really metabolize what we learned today together in community and really think about what that means moving forward in education and outside of education spaces as we continue to unsettle settler colonialism. And so if you registered for this conference, this non-ference, then you will receive a follow-up link. If you're having issues or did not receive that link for this R&B session and you want to attend, you can email us or connect with us through our website to get more information around that. So I just want to plug that there. It is going to be this upcoming Wednesday, November 18th from 5:30 to 7 p.m. And the other thing that I want to say is visit our website, y'all. You can subscribe to get our emails. We're not bugaboos. We ain't gonna be sending you emails all the time because, like I said, we are grassroots. We are struggling on this end, and we are doing our very best to make sure that folks have access to really important resources and information. So if you want that continual kind of access to our work, then you want to subscribe. And then you can also subscribe to our co-conspirator calendar on the website. And basically it is organizations that we are in solidarity with and that we trust that are putting out different events that you can learn from or resources, and we plug it in that calendar. So you can join our calendar there, as well as check out our virtual resource fair. Anyone who has ever been to T4SJ Live knows that our resource fair is always on fleek. Like, we got such a range of resources, gear, folks from the community, right? And so we did our best to make sure you have access to that online. So you could just go to our website. And lastly, we want to close out with just a reflection Padlet. We really want to push out there, y'all, please do not come and take without actually also offering back. That's a really important practice for us. And so as you take away these different ideas and this learning from today, what does that mean for your action moving forward? What does that mean in your praxis? And so this link here will take you to the Padlet just as some closing thoughts. And then lastly, I'll say we do have an evaluation form, but we recognize that we're up on time. So you'll get a follow-up link where you can actually give us some feedback on this event. But for the last few moments that you have with us, we just ask that you reflect using this Padlet and, continue to build with us as we do this work together. We appreciate y'all. And as always, we stand in solidarity with you and all communities who are marginalized and continue to fight the various forms of oppression in this nation. So again, thank you to our panelists. Thank you to T4SJ. Y'all don't know how many people behind the scenes have, sacrificed sleep, sacrificed family time, sacrificed, self-care time to be able to make this event possible. So I want to thank all of our core organizers who have put in that work. And thank y'all for joining us on this Saturday. Much love, y'all.
As I look into your eyes, I realize that we're living out the white man's lies. There was no compromise, just a seat as I faced the defeat that was put here long before me. At times I find it hard to accept. I ask God, is this a test? Is this really all we have left? Cause my son's life is just getting started. In life it's seeming harder, just to try stay above the water. I remember the days of way back when we had no gang fights, we had no crack pipes, and brothers got along in the families. What the hell went wrong with the families? My reservation.
I'm feeling the pain, the strain on my mental weighs heavy. Genocide makes me live my native life deadly. I hope you get me, if you don't, let it marinate. The mind state of my people, we try to set that straight. We never brought residential schools to this place. We never brought alcoholic fluid to our tastes. We would never go and try change you. What you did to my descendants changed the elders' lives too. And all the time you knew, now we feeling reserved, living disturbed, living a life, we never deserved. The native way of thinking ain't the way of the old. It's time to look towards the future, let our story unfold.
I'm feeling reserved, man, that's how I'm living. I gotta do with this mic I was given to try to get by, no word of a lie. We gotta try to restore pride. I'm feeling reserved, man, that's how I'm living. I gotta do with this mic I was given to try to get by, no word of a lie. We gotta try to restore pride.
Reservations only.
No need to wait for seeding. Natives continue bleeding. The circle just keeps repeating. This feeling filling the void. Exploited people changing. It's why I turn the tables like time, turning the page and going against the grain. Engaged in health throughout the day. No way it's simple or plain. Need to maintain through these pains. Taking these short ends, making on causing acrylic abortion. It all costs so all the real can gain applause. Reserves relentless. Yo, it's what I gotta contend with. Sundance the rest demented. Genuine, I'll send the lessons from beneath the ground sentence. To bless the four elements. This mic, this light, this rest, this life. I represent my residence.
Sweet grace, how music lets my mind take flight. Res life, my life. Living awake of sleepless nights. Be my eyes colorblind. Catch a glimpse of baby's sight. Realize there's more to see than all this rock around me. Grant this girl a beat and let my soul run free. Amidst the plague of war, there ain't no way I'd rather be. One love for my people, UNITE. Instead of feeling reserved, my reserve feel me.
I'm feeling reserved. Man, that's how I'm living. I gotta do with this mic I was given to try to get by. No word of a lie. We gotta try to restore pride. I'm feeling reserved. Man, that's how I'm living. I gotta do with this mic I was given to try to get by. No word of a lie. We gotta try to restore pride. I'm feeling reserved. Man, that's how I'm living. I gotta do with this mic I was given to try to get by. No word of a lie. We gotta try to restore pride.
Yeah, it's that healing song, man. We alright now, man. Yeah, one for one for all. You live, you give. And this right here's a G-Mac production, y'all. We lost Carmen long ago, we lost Tom. Thank you, God, for letting us move on. Thank you, J-Mac, for helping us pull through. To my family, I try hard for you. It's the way you live, it's the way you give. It's the way that you show that you give a shit. You give. And damn, it's like one for one and one for all. If you ain't there for one of us, then you ain't there at all. It's that fellowship, man, it's that hello shit. When you see your friends hang out and tell them shit, I reminisce and try hard not to miss all the good times. I got your best interest in mind. One for one for all.
For one and one for all, together we rise, alone we all fall. My comrade lyrically, we've seen it through it all. You shed in our victories and ease on the fall. For all those who know me, I hope you know well. I'm not one to forget, I know that you helped. I work with, thanks for sharing your strengths. You who laughed when I was happy or cried at my pain. Without you I'm nothing, you're part of the dream. Thank you for giving, supporting the team. For the confident beats, you kept me on track. And all those who love me, I love you right back.
God for blessing me when having a chance, able to make it out of a place where you never advance. This rap had me twisted, I was rapping out lies. Man, I was down for anything to get a piece of the pie. But yo, what party showed me that it's not about the bling. If I did it all again, man, I wouldn't change a thing. For real, man, all for one, that's how it is. Be real, be one for all, so be like this. I love living life, for friendship is what you have. I declared it to y'all, I know a party will last. God put us together, man, we love and respect. It's all for one, one for all, we'll never forget.
Yeah. Last word. If I never see tomorrow, this my last word and testament. First of all, I say miigwech for the best of it. Creator gave me some and my fam gave the rest of it. I hope I did you proud and gave my boys the elements that they need to succeed and didn't leave impediments. I hope they mother knows she helped with my development back when I was desolate. Dearest mom, for you my best sentiments. Stepped to my resemblance, I hit the lessons hard. The hard knocks I did learn. The pride made me suffer, my ego made me burn. A cell is not a place, but a place that I return. But too many times now, the good things what I earn. I hold on to my joy, no you cannot detach me. Never stop running on my demons, my catchment. Nothing in this world down below or up above that I cannot overcome with some prayer and your love, so I pray.
And if I die tomorrow, I'll be alright.
In case I never say goodbye, cause you know how this life is.
Knowing that I once made you smile.
And if I never blow up, then at least I was the nicest.
I'll be alright.
I am my own man, whether mainstream or a native. So I can walk up in a sweater in the legislative and get the people tripping out whenever that I say. Original, creative, successful, I made it, but can't stay planted. Quoted, not a quote, I pass up anybody's standards. I like to get the cash, but the cash I never pandered. Asking why I'm rapping, you really want the answer? My mind is full of cancer, the relief is in the stanza. Advance the cause for all the people that'll never have the chance to pause. Take a second for deceased, now I'm back up on the beat. And yes, you're f***ing with the beast. It's the best of both worlds that the hatred is unleashed. When a white meets an Indian, the shaman and the priest. That's the turmoil inside and it's gotta find release. So I put it in a prayer and the prayer gives me peace, so peace.
And if I die tomorrow, I'll be alright.
In case I never say goodbye, cause you know how this life is.
Knowing that I once made you smile.
And if I never blow up, then at least I was the nicest.
This is my last word, I stand proud, palms up, facing my wrongs, embracing my light. This is my last word, I ask for forgiveness, see all the good, forget all the bad times. And if I die tomorrow, I'll be alright.
In case I never say goodbye, cause you know how this life is.
Knowing that I once made you smile.
And if I never blow up, then at least I was the nicest.
I'll be alright.
And this goes out to all of our dearly beloved Daryl, Danny, Danielle,
I'll be alright.
David, and those are just the D's.
I'll be alright.
Father C's, may you rest in peace.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Much love, and we look forward to continuing to work in solidarity together. Bye.